In these next two examples, we are going to solve by the quadratic formula. And remember, generally we use the quadratic formula when we can't factor. Okay, so none of these are more than likely going to be factorable. But to use the quadratic formula, it is given to you. It is right here. Negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So the first thing I like to do is label what's my a, what's my b, and what's my c. Okay. Your a is always the number that's in front of the x squared. So 7 is in front of the x squared. Okay. Your b is always what's in front of the x. So there's a negative 5 because there's a minus sign there in front of the x, so our b is negative 5. And your c is just this constant, that number in the back that doesn't have a variable. Then what I like to do is fill out the bones of my quadratic formula. So wherever there's a letter, I put a parenthesis. Everything else is staying the same. But wherever I put a letter, where there's a letter, I put a parenthesis. And then I fill my letters in the right spot. So B goes in this first spot. B goes in the second spot. A goes in this first spot, C goes in this back spot, and A goes in the bottom, based off what is drawn in our formula. I put the numbers in the right spot based off the letter. Then I clean it up. Here I have a double negative, so that's going to turn to a positive 5. Another way of thinking of it is opposite of B. So if my B is negative, when I plug it in, it's going to turn positive. Okay. I like to plug in what's under my radical all in one step, so I'm going to save that here for a second. But in the bottom, 7 times 2 is 14. So in my calculator, I'm going to type in exactly what is written without the radical, just what's underneath. Okay, so I'm going to plug that part in. Negative 5 squared minus 4 times 7 times 5. Exactly how it's written. Negative 5 with the parentheses around that negative 5. Negative 5 squared minus 4 times 7 times 5. Make sure I have that right. Yes, negative 5 minus 4 times 7 times 5. Okay? Make sure you put parentheses, type in exactly how you wrote it on your paper. No radical though. And we get negative 115. So I'm going to write negative 115 underneath my radical. Then we have to simplify our radical. Well, I notice there's a negative underneath my radical, so that means I have to take out a 9. Whenever you have a negative underneath your radical, you take out a 9. Everything else is staying the same. Then we have to see, can we simplify radical 15? 115. We'll play around with the numbers a little bit. If you're unsure, start dividing 115 by some perfect squares. Nope. Try 25. Nope. Try 36. Nope. And as you're guessing and checking, you're going to find out that no perfect squares can go into 115. Okay? So that's it. That's all we can do. We took out our I. We can't simplify to 115 anymore. We can't divide anything. Nothing in our fraction can simplify. So we are done. There's that answer. If you notice, we got I in our answer, which means it's an imaginary solution, meaning this quadratic does not touch the x-axis. Okay? It's imaginary. Let's take a look at the next one. Same kind of thing, but this is a little bit different because in order to factor, your quadratic has to be equal to 0. Okay, so just like we did on the front with the factoring, we're going to keep the x squared where it is because it makes your life easier to have a positive x squared. So I'm going to move everything else over. So I'm going to add that 2x over. Again, there's not a like term, so it just stays 2x at the end. Cancel it out. Then I'm going to move the 5 over. So I get 2x squared plus 2x minus 5 equals 0. Okay. So then we're going to do just like we did on the last one. You have to figure out what's my A, what's my B, and what's my C. Number in front of the x squared is my a. The number in front of the x is my b. And that number by itself is my c. And then we fill it into the quadratic formula. So looking off the formula up here in the upper right-hand corner, we have negative something plus or minus something squared minus something times something all over 2 times something. Okay. Wherever there's a letter, you put a parenthesis. And then you plug your numbers in the right spot. B goes here, B also goes here, then A, and then C, and then A. Okay, based off what that formula says in that upper corner. So it's B, and then A, C, and then A in the bottom. And then we're going to clean it up. Here I have a minus 2, negative 2, so it just stays negative 2. Again, another way of thinking about it is opposite of B. So my B is positive 2, so I plug it in, it turns negative 2. Oh, didn't mean to draw that way. Okay, so that just is going, we're going to figure out what's underneath our radical here in a second, and the bottom 2 times 2 is 4. Again, I'm going to plug this in exactly how it's written into my calculator. Okay, I'm going to plug it in as 2 squared minus 4 times 2 times negative 5. Okay. 2 squared minus 4 times 2 times negative 5. And I get 44. So 44 is going to go inside my radical. Once you've kind of cleaned everything up, you're going to look at your radical and see if you can simplify it. And we can. You're either going to use the factor tree method or the largest perfect squares method. I like to use the largest perfect square. Okay. So you have to figure out what's the largest perfect square that can go into 44, and the largest perfect square is 4. And it can go into 44 11 times. So then the square root of 4 is 2. Can't take the square root of 11, so we tack it on. So this 2 radical 11 now replaces the radical 44. Okay? So we rewrite it as negative 2 plus or minus 2 radical 11 all over 44. We also had a positive 44 underneath our radical, so that means we don't take out an on. We just leave it. Your very last step is check and see, once you've simplified your radical, how can we simplify the fraction? Okay? Is there a number that can go into 2, 2, and 4? And that number is 2. So when we divide, negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1. 2 divided by 2 is positive 1. You don't have to write the 1 if you don't want to. You can if you find it helpful. And then the bottom, 4 divided by 4 is 2. You can only simplify if all 3 numbers are divisible by the same one, and they are. And there you go. Okay, go ahead and try those 3 examples at the bottom. And then you are done with this worksheet.